Well, in today's lesson, we will be going through Music Theory Unit 5, and we'll be learning about rests and time signatures. Now, rests are important because we've already gone over notes and note values, and them are holding out of pitch in a specific time, length of time. Well, music also does the same thing for rests. Sometimes you have to have silences in between. Music it has a way to notate how long silences are. Maybe just a composer just wants a space of time is what rests are good for, or perhaps maybe a different instrument's playing and that instrument should be the focus, so all the other instruments or other voices should be silent. And so silence on a piece of sheet music indicates to a musician, either vocal or instrumental, when to be silent and when to play and when to make noise on through their instrument, through their voice. Okay, so rests have very useful purposes, not for just telling you when to stop. In the overall composition of a piece, they can play an important part in artistry. So let's go ahead and dive in. If you have not already done so, open up the Google Docs document on the Google Classroom, and you can follow along as we go through these slides. So here we go. This is rests and time signatures. Okay, so silence in music is notated by what is called a rest. It gets the same note value and their name from their relation to their counterparts in pitch. So we have the same type of, say we have a whole note, we also have a whole rest. Think of it as if it's two sides of the same coin. The note head on one side gives the pitch, on the opposite side of the coin you have its opposite, its rest. So it's like the two sides of a coin. Or if you want to go sci-fi, or in science, think matter and antimatter. They are opposites, polar opposites of each other. Okay, so just like as a half note is half of a whole note, a quarter note is a quarter of a whole note. Rests are divided the exact same way. So let's go ahead and get into here and talk about some of these rests. So our first one is going to be a whole rest. So a whole rest receives 4 beats of silence. So if you remember, the beat is the underlying pulse of the music that ties it all together. So in music with a rest, you have silence, no tone, no pitch. It's just that beat that's continuing on. Either that beat is audibly heard or it's internalized. It's the beat that you feel inside, you hear inside your head, you feel inside your body. So a whole rest, it means to rest for an entire measure. Now a measure, all it is, if you look on a piece of music, it is a block of space where notes are inserted into. So if you see the staff line, as you see here on this image, this is a piece of a staff. If there was a straight line going down through here, and I should have a marker, but I don't. Okay, so there's a straight line going here and a straight line down here. This would be one measure. So it's blocked off by measure lines. This is a measure line or a bar. This is a measure line here or a bar. So you have 1 bar or 2 bars on either end of the measure. Okay? So, and this rest right here, so this little black spot right here, it will always hang from the 4th line. Remember, 1, 2, 3, 4. The lines of the spaces of the staff are counted from bottom up, lowest to highest, 1 to 5. This will be hanging from the center of line 4. Always there in the center of the line, center of the 4th line. And again, it means you're going to rest or be silent for a whole measure. Now, if we were to count this, when we get into in a little bit later in this lesson, we'll be counting these measures. We're going to be clapping our hands. That clapping of the hands will give us the beat. We'll maintain our beat, that steady underlying pulse. And then we will also be counting the beats. So if we have 4 beats in a measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll say those numbers out loud. Now we'll get into the rest of that in just a moment. So let's keep going. Whole rest, that's a whole rest. So now, half of a whole rest is a half rest. You gotta have half of something, it's in its name. So a half rest receives 2 beats of silence. 2 beats of silence. Just like the half note gets 2 beats of sound, of pitch, the half rest gets 2 beats of silence. And it looks like this. Looks like a little box that sits, our little top hat. If you were to take scissors and cut this line here and cut this line here, the 3rd line, it would look like a little top hat. And if you ever look at any picture of Abraham Lincoln or a painting of him, that's a top hat that he wears. That's what a top hat is. Now this little rest will always sit on the third line. 1, 2, 3. Line 3 will always and forever be resting on this third line. That's how you can tell the difference between a whole rest and a half rest. A whole rest looks like a hole in the ground. And we'll get into that in just one second. I'll go into that right now. So whole notes and half notes, they look very similar. They're basically the same thing. They're literally just flipped. That's all. That's what they are. So if you look at a whole note looks like a hole in the ground. If you were to walk on this line here, you'd fall into that hole right there. Okay? And a half rest, it's the same thing. It's just flipped and sitting on the third line. So the half rest looks like a little top hat sitting on the ground. So that's what that looks like there. Okay? So now there's a third type of rest is a quarter rest. A quarter rest gets one beat of silence, and it looks somewhat like a little letter Z stacked on top of a C. So if I were to draw a Z right here, a little weirdly shaped Z right here, if you look at my laser pointer here, and then there's a funny looking little C right there, that's what is a quarter rest. Okay, so let me draw this rest for you so that way you can see exactly what it looks like, what I'm talking about when I say I'm going to draw a Z and a little C on the bottom of it. So I'm going to start here in the fourth space, excuse me. I'm going to draw a straight line, or a diagonal line down to line 4. Then I'm going to do a little zip right there, down to there. And then here I'm going to come down with another little line. There's my Z, weirdly shaped Z. Then back on that same spot that I just stopped on, I'm going to come back up, draw a little bit of a C, and boom, there's my rest, or there's my quarter rest. Now there's a little, you can do this all in one motion. Once you have a little more practice with it, you can do it just like that. Okay. Now it'll also need to be just a little bit more centered, but we'll practice that as the time comes. So I'm going to try it one more time. Whoops. See, even teachers get it wrong sometimes. There's my quarter rest. Okay, that's what a quarter rest will look like. So a little fancy little Z and a C stacked on top of each other. All right, let's keep going. Okay, now each of these rests, as I said before, equals the same amount of time as their corresponding note values, as we said before. So we have our whole note here, and it has the same thing as a whole rest. Here's our whole note, and here's our whole rest. We have our half note, here's our half rest, our quarter note, and our quarter rest. Each of these rests has the same amount of time value as each of these notes. So the whole rest is held for 4 beats of silence. The half rest is held for 2 beats of silence. The quarter rest is held for 1 beat of silence. So that's where they get their names from. It's all derived from the whole note or from the whole rest, either one. So, for example, just like a quarter note receives 1 beat, a quarter rest is going to receive 1 beat as well. Half note receives 2. We just said that. So I'm going to demonstrate these examples here. Let's go through this first one here. You'll notice I have the beat numbers written underneath here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And they're underneath their corresponding note or rest that is supposed to either be spoken on the beat with a sound, a pitch, that would be a note, or a silence. Now we will indicate a beat, a pitch on beat, as we're speaking in rhythm. As far as counting this, we'll count this rhythm and clap on the beat. We clap on a note to indicate noise, because you're making a noise. If there's a note there, you're making a sound. So we clap on the note, and we open our hands on the rest. So for this first example here, that I'm indicating on my laser pointer here on the screen, it'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So notice I clapped whenever there was a quarter note, and I opened my hands and pulsed when there was a rest. So this will be the first one again. Listen again and watch. This is the first example right here. 1, I'm going to give 1 full measure of count so you can get the tempo. 1, 2, ready, begin. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you try it. I'll count off a measure. You try it exactly like I just did. Ready? 1, 2, 3, begin. All right, nicely done. If you were able to do 1, 2, 3, 4, then you're correct. Now let's go to the half rest, okay? Now to indicate this, these two beats here, we're going to say 1, 2. We're going to hold that note by holding our hands, holding that note, and saying the beat number underneath it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so even though there's only one rest here, we still pulse our hands on the beat to indicate there's that rest receives 2 beats of silence. Okay, so listen to me again. I'll demonstrate the second one here. 1, 2, ready, begin. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now your turn to repeat after me. You repeat what I just did. I'll give a count off and you try it. Ready? 1, 2, ready, begin. All right, so if you did 1, 2, 3, 4, you're correct. Now, what about a whole rest? What are we going to do on a whole rest here? What we're going to do here is we simply open up our hands and we pulse a silence for 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a whole rest. That one's fairly straightforward and simple to do. All right, let's keep going. Now, a subdivision, what we've done so far, especially with note values, we have subdivided it from the whole note. So the 4 quarter notes are a subdivision of a whole note. Okay, so it's a broken down hierarchy starting with the whole note, and then it subdivides down into quarter notes, and the same applies with the rests. So these notes, you look on this division tree here, we start with our whole rest. It divides down from the whole rest, divides down to 2 half rests. 2 half rests, just like in our notes. Then each of these half rests divide into 2 quarter rests. 2 quarter rests. Okay? And then there's 2 over here for this one. So altogether, 1, 2, 3, 4 quarter rests are a subdivision of a whole rest. So think of it this way. This level is level 1. This is our first level. Level 2 is the division. Level 3, so here with the quarter notes, is a subdivision because it is under the division, the first one. So think of it that way. So this tree shows those relationships and their rhythmic value. Now again, these are exactly the same way with their counterpart of pitch. So 1 whole note, same as a whole rest. 2 half notes here, same as these 2 half rests. These 4 quarter notes here, same as these 4 quarter rests. Same exact division, same exact way. These quarter notes are a subdivision of the whole note. Here's our level 1, here's our division with the half notes, and our subdivision with the quarter notes. Okay, so thus far we have discussed the individual notes. We have talked about their time values of individual notes, as well as their corresponding rests. But what is a way that we can try to organize just these individual notes if we have several of them together? Is there any way that we can put them into smaller pieces and smaller bites in which we can consume the work of music? And especially if we're trying to study the staff, the score of it. There is a way. We can use a time signature. This is one way of doing it in connection with measures, time signatures. These numbers here that you see on the screen, they're a set of 2 numbers that are stacked on top of each other that appear at the beginning of music. They begin at the beginning of a full piece of music. They generally stay with it all the way through, and they'll see it at the beginning of a musical line on each page of music. And these offer us some information, making it a lot easier to recognize the meter of a piece. If you remember in a previous lesson, we talked about the meter of a piece, duple, triple, and quadruple. Time signatures help us indicate and find out whether the piece is in either one of those meters very, very quickly. We can figure out if it's duple, if we look at the top, duple, triple, or quadruple, if we look at the top numbers here. The 2, the 3, and the 4, as you see on these 3 time signatures. These will tell you that there are 2 beats per measure or grouped together for instance, with the 2-4 time signature here. 2-4 time signature, 2 on top, 4 on the bottom, tells us the top number tells us that there are 2 beats per measure, and then in 3-4 time there's 3 beats per measure. And in 4/4 time, there's 4 beats per measure. So duple, triple, and quadruple. That tells us what type of meter that we're in. But it also, the bottom number tells us a very important information as well. As the top number, as I said, tells you how many beats or counts are grouped together in a measure, the lower number indicates what type of note receives one beat. Thus far, we have looked at the quarter notes, whole notes, and half notes. So if you see, for instance, in these 3 time signatures here, a 4 on the bottom of this time signature, that indicates that the quarter note will be receiving the beat. Again, that steady underlying pulse that is all throughout a piece of music. So that 4 on the bottom indicates that this is going to be a beat where the quarter note receives the beat. And there are 2 beats, 3 beats, and 4 beats, respectively, for 2/4, 3/4, and 4/4. So you'd see 2 quarter notes receiving the beat in 2/4 time, 3 quarter notes receiving the beat in 3/4 time, and 4 quarter notes receiving the beat in 4/4 time. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these exercises here. So we see here our quarter notes. We have 4 in this measure. Imagine there's a line here, and if there's a line here. We have 4 quarter notes grouped together, and we know that this is 4/4 time because our time signature here says there's 4 and 4, 4/4 time. 4 beats per measure, 1, 2, 3, 4. The quarter note gets the beat. Quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, quarter note. So let's try this exercise. I'm going to count off a measure of 4 so that you can get your tempo and your speed. And then as we practice this exercise, I want you to count these beat numbers here. This is beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, and beat 4. For now, let's try counting the beat and clapping on the beat. So again, we clap on the beat if there's a note, and if there's a rest there, we have open hands and pulsing. So this measure here, this example would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what this one would sound like. But if we were to sing it, and to sing these syllables underneath the tas, these indicate that the beat is 1 beat, 1 note per beat. So you would actually say the word ta, 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 ta as you were going through this exercise here. So I will count off 1 beat of measure, one measure of the beat, so you can get a hold of the tempo, and then I will demonstrate this exercise. So this is what it would sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, 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 ta. And I'm holding out that vowel until the next beat where the consonant of the ta is reiterated, because the pitch is reiterated. It's played again. So that's the reason why I repeat the tas for each beat. Now for the half note, we know half notes are 2 beats. So the half note gets 2 beats. We see here, here's a half note, here's a half note. Beat 1, beat 2. The half note is reiterated on beat 3 and held on beat 4. We know these are going to be held because we see this little dash here between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. This little dash means for us to sing a continuous sound between beats 1 and beat 2. So you would say the syllable ta on the beat, on beat 1, ta, and because we're holding that note for 2 beats, we're going to hold our hands, we're going to hold that note and hold out that vowel. Ta, ta. So now we've sung 2 beats of on each half note. So if we were to sing this on pitch, ta, ta, we know here, because there's a dash in between that text, that we hold that vowel out until the next reiteration of the beat, which in this case is on beat 3. So let me count off a measure and do this exercise with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, ta. Okay, if you're able to do that, very nice, very nice. So practice on your own here. I'll count off a measure, sing, and then I'll do the exercise, and then I want you to repeat after me after I give you a beat of 1 measure of the beat to give you the tempo. So again, I'll give you the tempo, I'll do the exercise, and then I'll give you the tempo and then give you a chance to do the exercise that's on the screen as well. All right, so here's your demonstration, me first. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. ta, ta. Your turn. 1, 2, ready, go. Very nice if you were able to do that. Very, very nice. All right, let's go on to the next one. The whole note. The whole note here. We see that the whole note we know is held for 4 beats. So if we were to sing this pitch, we would count all 4 beats here. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the vowel that we say with these syllables here at the bottom would be all tied together. So we'd have one instance of a ta, and then the ah is pulsed all the way through beats 2, 3, and 4. So this would sound like this. Ta. Okay? And if we were to sing it, it would sound like this. Ta. Now, normally we would not pulse that if you heard a little bit of a pulse as I held out that vowel. But just for exercise sake and for emphasis sake for y'all to learn it, I pulse that vowel. So, let's try this exercise again. Let me demonstrate it. Let me count off. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta. Now this again is speaking in rhythm. That's what this is, speaking in rhythm. So now it's your turn. I'll demonstrate it, give you a measure, demonstrate it, and then I'll give you a measure, and then you demonstrate. All right, let's try this. Ready? 1, 2, ready, go. Ta. All right, your turn. Here's your measure for tempo. 1, 2, ready, go. If you were able to complete that, nicely done, nicely done. So the same thing goes for rests as well as the notes as we've done before, but instead of pulsing together on a beat or clapping a beat on a rest, it would just be silences. So let's practice a little bit here. Let's practice with this exercise. We see here that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 measures in this exercise, and if you look here, these lines, these bars here at the end, that's what we call a double bar. That indicates that that is the end of the musical piece, the end of the musical line, or in this case, that's the end of the exercise. Okay, so we see here, we have our 4/4 time signature, 2 4s stacked on top of each other, the 4 on top telling us we have 4 beats per measure, the 4 on the bottom telling us the beat is, the quarter note will receive the beat. And we can see that especially here in measure 3, where we have 4 quarter notes, each one is on the beat. Okay, so let's try this. Let's try just measure 1, and then we'll try the couple other spots in this exercise. Okay, let me demonstrate first. Here's how this one goes. I'll give 1 full measure of count off to give you the tempo. Ready? Just starting on measure 1, this first measure right here. Ready? 1, 2, demonstrating here. Ta, ta, ta. Now you noticed I clapped on each beat. Where there's a quarter note, I clapped. But when there was that rest, I opened my hands and it was silence. Okay? So since there's no tas or other syllables here on the bottom, I'm just going to do from here on out, I'm just going to count the beats. Count the beats. Okay? Here we go. Measure 1 again, demonstration. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now normally we wouldn't say 3 because there's a silence there, there's a rest, but just for exercise sake, I said 3 so you could hear that. Okay, so now let's try measure. Actually, let's have you try measure 1 on your own. Okay, I'll give you a full measure of beats to give you your tempo, and then you try it. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. All right, if you're able to do that, nicely done. All right, let's add in the second measure here. Let's just do the second measure. Now you see here, we got a half note, which is 2 beats. Then we have a half rest, which also receives 2 beats. The note has 2 beats of sound or pitch. The rest has 2 beats of silence. So this measure would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how we would pulse that rhythm, that measure. Okay? So now you try that measure. I'll give a full measure for tempo, and you try it on your own. Ready? 1, 2, ready, go. All right, nicely done. Now let's combine measures 1 and 2 together and do them without stopping. Okay? So here is all of them together. Well, let me demonstrate first. Ready? Then you can repeat after me. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now your turn. I'll give you one full measure count off for tempo. Ready? 1, 2, ready, go. Were you able to get through that? Okay, now let's go back and add in the tas. Okay, so we have ta right on each beat. Every time there's a beat or note on a beat, we reiterate ta. And then if it's ta, 2 notes, a half note, we say ta-ah. And if it's a whole note, we say ta-ah-ah-ah. All right, in tempo, of course. All right, so let's try this. Now, if it's on a if there's a rest there, I'm going to go shh, shh to indicate shh, silence. All right, so now let me demonstrate. Measures 1 and 2 with the tas. Ready? 1, 2, ready, go. Ta, ta, shh, ta, ta, shh. So that's how measures 1 and 2 would go with the tas. Okay, now let's take a look at measure 3. Measure 3, here's what it would sound like. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So each one of those is a quarter note, so it's on the beat. We say the beat, say the pitch, say the note on the beat, say da on the beat. Okay. Now here's with the tas. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta, 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 ta. Okay? So now, here's measure 4. Here's the last measure. We notice it's a whole note, so we're going to be holding that vowel out. Here's what it would sound like. Ta. So I reiterated 4 beats there. Okay? Now let's put measures 3 and 4 together. Once we do that, we'll go back and do the entire exercise together. Ready? Here we go. Measures 3 and 4. Last 2 measures. Ready? 1, 2. Let me demonstrate. 1, 2, ready, go. Ta, 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 ta. So that's measures 3 and 4. Your turn. Let's have you try measures 3 and 4 on your own. Ready? One beat a measure. One beat count. One measure count off. 1, 2, ready, go. All right, hopefully you were able to do that successfully. Now, let's go back and do this entire exercise starting from measure 1. Here we go. Let's do it all together. Ready? Do it with me. 1, 2, ready, go. Ta, ta, sh. Ta, ta, sh. Sh. Ta, 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 ta. Okay? Hopefully you were able to do that fairly well. Okay, so that covers everything thus far with beats, rests, note values, and pitches. So we will continue to use these exercises, especially rhythm. So if you noticed before, let me go back to the full screen here, that this was not on a staff. This was just on a special line. This line is designed for rhythm exercises. Since the pitches are not going to change, there's no up and down vertical motion. Everything is going to stay horizontal motion when we do rhythm exercises like this. Now when we start adding pitches and rhythms, then the pitches will move up and down on the staff. But for now, it's just going to be for rhythm exercises on this single line thusly. So we'll get more of these exercises in the days to come, and I hope that this helps you to understand more about rests and time signatures. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me.